How would you feel about a law that requires people over the age of 70 to pass a specialized driving test in order to continue driving? Here in Illinois, my grandpa had to do it every year after 75. That's a great idea. I'm going to call my 8-year-old congressman and ask him to support such legislation. Edit. Most driving laws are passed by state legislators, who usually do drive themselves. Old retired guy here. 74 years old to be precise. I would accept such a test provided it was only to catch really age-related diseases, dementia, poor reflexes, etc. I live in a retirement community and most of the people who should not have a license have already given them up. The first day I was here I heard a conversation between two guys. Guy 1, I just turned 88 and turned in my driver's license. Guy 2, why would you do that? Guy 1, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in jail. I'm all for retesting people. However, I'm not sure what you mean by specialized. The requirements for good driving don't change with age, so it should be the same test. Ideally, we'd all be retested every 10 years or so until we hit 60. Then we're retested every 5 years. However, older folks are a huge voting bloc and it's unlikely this would ever pass. I send patients for driver's evaluations if their ability to navigate through my office is concerningly questionable. Unaware drivers are just as dangerous as impaired drivers. Asterisk, let me say this about that. Asterisk, the neighbor I love is 93 and still driving. When she's up to it, she can barely see the on-off switch on her vacuum cleaner. Should she be driving? I want her to maintain independence. But at the same time, I don't think it's safe for her or others. Yet the DMV doesn't require her to take a vision exam or a competency test. Please. My grandma is practically blind and went to take her driving vision test to renew her license. She failed, but the lady at the DMV felt bad, so she had her take it again and gave her hints so she could pass it. So now my practically blind grandma is out on the road still. It's for their safety as much as anyone else's. I'm so mad that the lady at the DMV was so irresponsible as to let her keep driving. All for it. When I was 14, my friend was coming to my house and he got killed by my next-door neighbor who happened to be elderly. My friend was on his skateboard and he was just up the street from my house. From the position of his body and where elderly guy stopped his car, I could see he made a super sharp left turn that killed him and ran over my other friend. The other friend survived and recovered from his injuries, but my other friend not so lucky. Oh, and my granddad has Alzheimer's and frequently forgets where he is. And I think he still has his license, though my grandma finally took his keys. I'm an IDOC and I'd be all for it. You know how often I get berated or threatened by geriatrics when I strongly suggest that they quit driving because they no longer meet the legal requirements for driving? People should have to retake the driver's test every 10 years if not 20. I've seen too many terrible drivers of all ages. Can we make everyone take it? Seriously. I see more horrible drivers in the commuting age bracket than in the retired age bracket. My grandma rear-ended a line of stopped cars on the highway at full speed. No brakes. With my 5-year-old brother in the car because she thought she saw a deer on the side of the road. She's been in another, less serious wreck, and has come to a dead stop while on the highway because she forgot where she was going multiple times since then. My dad had to unplug her battery and tell her that her car doesn't work anymore so she would start asking for rides. I would love if they took age into account in some way. I'm not an expert on anything so I don't know how they would do it. so that families wouldn't have to be torn between treating their elders like a child or worrying if they're going to get a call from the hospital anytime they're behind the wheel. My fiancé's brother was killed riding his motorcycle Sunday by a 91-year-old who pulled out in front of him. Monsieur, he left behind a wife and 3 children. He was one of the best guys I ever met. We are all devastated, and it could have been prevented. That man had no business behind the wheel. I'd be okay with it if over 70 drivers are statistically more likely to get into accidents. I live in a town that caters to older people, and watching them drive is painful. By them, I mean end of middle age and up. From going 30 km/h in a 70 km/h zone, to watching them stare out the side window while going through that same zone. They swerve from side to side. I refuse to go anywhere with my grandpa driving, as he is now a horrible driver and has nearly crashed the car multiple times, then blames it on other drivers. However, I won't say that only elderly people need to be tested. I would hate having to do so, but we all should be tested. Just last night, teenagers drove over a school's fence in a large truck. People saw them. Cops haven't caught them. Monsieur, younger people speed more, usually 70 in a 50. In just today, I got stuck behind someone doing 20 km/h in a 50 zone. And then while I was going 60 km/h, someone flew past me like I was standing still. The roads would be better if we were all retested. And in regards to my town, if cops would actually do their job, going severely under the speed limit is dangerous just as speeding is. We need statistics to show us which demographics cause the most accidents over distance driven. If the over 70 leads in this, then yes. As an insurance professional, just because you have been doing something for a long time, does not mean you're good at it. Drivers should be tested every 5 years, not just once you hit a certain age. Everyone should take a standardized road test every 5 years. I'm for it. The inability for old people to drive would result in them voting en masse for public transportation improvements. By the time the law was passed, self-driving cars will be available. Or, how about you just have to do a refresher course every 10 years? There are a lot of people out there with fully functional senses that still need a reminder about the rules of the road. I'd be all for it if we can compensate them by providing transportation to those who can no longer drive. For low-cost self-driving cars may soon fit this position. They should make everyone take driver's ed classes every 10 years. It's ridiculous to think someone who passed driver's ed even 20 years ago knows all the new traffic laws and car technology. Ontario has testing every 2 years for 80 plus. 70 is a bit young for that. Honestly. Edit. I'm surprised at how vehemently everyone disagrees with me that 70 is a bit young. It may be true that I just happen to know a lot of abnormally strong and healthy older people. But most of the 70 plus I know in no way fit the sickly, doddering image I think a lot of us have of the elderly. Just like the majority of 20 and under don't fit the irresponsible, reckless image a lot of people have of kids. According to these, admittedly old, stats. http www.allcountries.org/u census/1045_age_driver_and_number_in HTML. The vast majority of traffic fatalities are caused by younger people. A better solution is to test everyone every few years, and have stricter medical conditions for everyone. This has been tried, but the organizations like AARP are very powerful and shoot down this type of legislation. It's hard enough to book a driving test these days. It takes a good 4 months in the UK. This would worsen the situation. Based on the state of driving I see every day, everyone should have to pass a driver's test every 5 years. It won't happen. I'm assuming you're talking about the US. The DMV is a state-level agency, not federal. So if one state were to have that law, another state may not have it. 70 seems a little young these days. I have a neighbor that I fish with at least once a week. He drives his truck, towing a bass boat, without issue, and he's 71 or maybe 72. Of course, maybe he's the exception, but I can see a test for people of a certain age. I'm just not sure what age I'd make the law. Maybe 75. My chick's 86-year-old grandmother drives, but she keeps it to daytime hours during clear weather, and stays within about a 5-mile radius in our small town. Grocery store, pharmacy, post office, doctor appointments, vet visits, etc. She's not had an accident, but I could understand a driving test for her. Really though, her understanding her limitations keeps things safe for her and others. It's such an individual scenario, but I guess we'd have to draw a line somewhere. Over 70? My aunt started getting dementia at 58 and should have had her license taken then and there. Test us every 10 years or with referral from a doc. Perhaps this would be best applied to the overall population. Retest with license renewal every 10 to 20 years by default. Emo. Cop here. I can only speak from my experience, but I've dealt with many more crashes involving teens to 30s than elderly folks. Mostly because the younger folks are eyeballs, deep in their phones. Emo driving tests in the US need to be more difficult and have the driver face most every scenario, with at least 2 versions of each. In addition, this should have to be renewed every 5 or 10 years with your DL. I am a fire engine driver in OC, LA and CA, and there are too many drivers, Garden Grove and DTLA, that don't know to pull over and just stop, or try and make their turn before we catch up. Car accidents are the leading fatality for a reason. Secret to old life like Japan? Better driving habits and rules. My father-in-law had some muscular degeneration for a few years before he passed away. He couldn't physically lift his feet to walk, and sitting wasn't much better. He ran a stop sign and almost hit another car and a pedestrian with my wife in the car because he couldn't move his foot from the gas to the brake fast enough. She took his license out of his wallet and threw it in the fire when they got home. He was pissed for a long time, because in his head he was perfectly able to drive, and didn't even recall his near accident. Who knows how often that actually happened when we weren't around. I'd rather see mass adoption of autonomous vehicles that would give the elderly the freedom of transportation without the need for driving. I believe they would self-police themselves to autonomous vehicles over driving themselves. In my experience, it seems like everyone needs a refresher after, let's say, 10 years. One reason is traffic laws change without our knowledge, except for maybe an article on page 6 of the paper. For example, I just learned that in PA they passed a law in June 2016 that allows drivers to go through a red light that isn't changing. Also, it seems that everyone thinks that turn signals and speed limits are optional and the left lane is for going the same speed as everyone else. Why is this so highly upvoted? I want everyone to retest every 5 years. Period. And I want the test to actually be both relevant to real driving and failable if you suck. This comment should be higher up. Because of the lengthiness, it may not get the attention it deserves, but the message is so important and so valid. Thanks for sharing, buddy. Here. Thank you for sharing. It's a shame it took a few wrecks to make her realize But I respect your mother for voluntarily giving up this freedom and convenience once she realized she was a danger. I'd bet most people wouldn't do that. Not trying to insult you or anything, but after the first accident, even the second wife would not just take her keys away and say, "I am sorry, Mom, I can't let you hurt yourself or someone else." I think older drivers definitely need to be retested and have restrictions put on their licenses to driving at night, driving only within certain distances of the home, driving above certain speeds, etc., up to and including revocation if found to be impaired to a significant degree. And I'm staring down 70 myself. In Japan, they have special decals that identify new drivers and the elderly, which I think is a good thing. If you see someone with an elderly tag, you might not assume that driver sees everything you do or reacts as quickly as you do. I had trouble getting my dad to quit driving because I knew he couldn't see. He couldn't tell me from my daughter from across the room, "Monsieur." I called the DMV for suggestions and they sent him a letter to come in for a vision test. Asterisk, he passed. Asterisk. He was in his 90s with cataracts and dementia. We had a lot of rancor over this issue and he ended up living with my brother, whom he would actually listen to, and he quit driving. I'm assuming that's the same for everyone his age? And if they ever need to get a vote on such an issue, it's not like seniors are the best at getting themselves to the polls. Oh, you have a young one. Marilyn Steny Hoyer is 78. Don't think I will get a lot of support here. Edit. Fixed autocorrect crap. Ha ha ha. Very nice. Also ask him for better public transit. Let's get those Futurama tubes going. This is a large part of the problem, monsieur. The people that do the most frequent voting are the elderly, and they won't vote against anything that hinders their independence. Wow, you have a young congressman. I live in South Florida, Boca area, and am an attorney. Many clients are in retirement communities. I always insist on driving to them, monsieur. I've only lived here a little over a year. I've witnessed on multiple occasions people driving motorized wheelchairs on 6-lane roads. I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' retirement community's pool. One particular shocker was overhearing a woman say she was driving around and no longer taking her anti-seizure medication. Several residents sold their cars and bought golf carts and could get around easily that way. Edit Chad. My grandmother ended up bumping into several buildings and another car before deciding to sell her car. But she won't give up her license, just in case she decided to take a taxi to a dealership that would gladly sell her a car. Yeah, my grandfather gave up his license. He was around approximately 70 years old. He said he was driving home one day, looked around and realized he had no idea where he was. He parked his car, called my mom to come pick him up, and stopped driving then and there. The problem is the US is terrible for people without a car. Rural areas have awful transit options and everything is spread so far apart. Car-oriented design has ruined American cities. Why did I read that in the Two Old People Muppets voices and wait for a punchline? Question mark. If only most people of any age with poor driving skills were that self-aware. That's a wise old man. The problem is dumb people age too. Maybe he means a few preliminary questions before even getting near a vehicle. Few people on the road actually drive to the standard required of the test, though.